Hey everybody, Corey from aquariumcoop.com. Today, we're going to look at quarantine tanks. But first, do know my game is going to be off. I've got a raging headache. I felt horrible all day, but I thought I want to cover this topic. And it's almost like fitting that I myself am sick while talking about sick fish, really. Laid in bed with the puppies all day. After some work, of course. But anyway, alright. So why is a quarantine tank important? First, let's establish that whenever, let's say, two things mix, you can bring positives and negatives. So if we have two people from a different country, we can infect each other with different flus, colds, that type of thing, right? That's a pretty basic, low-level thing we can understand. Now, the same thing can go on with fish, but there's also a lot more that can go on. So a quarantine tank is somewhere you're going to bring in new fish, right? So new fish that are going to come into your fish room or house, whatever you want to call it. We like to keep them separate from the fish we have to make sure that they are healthy, right? So that's the quarantine period. Now there's a lot of talking on whether we do it for a week, we do it for a month, we do it for a year. And those are all legitimate, by the way. Like some angelfish breeders, if they were to get a new angelfish into their stock, they might be in a different building for a year before it ever crosses with their own line to see if it's going to get each other sick. So some of the farms do very, very extensive quarantining, like farm breeders. And then at home, there's a lot of us not quarantining at all. We rely on our local fish store, which is, if you have a good one, that's good. That's a good, you got a leg up. But there's still stuff that gets past us even. So, like, when we order fish in, let's back up. Let's back up a couple of steps. So, we need to end up at a quarantine tank at our house. But why? So, fish are going to be bred all over the world, right? And from taking disease classes, I've learned that certain illnesses are basically locale specific. So some countries might be very susceptible to different funguses or velvet. Another one might be very susceptible to ick. Another one might be susceptible to bacterial infections. Now, there's a lot of crossover there. Like, okay, yeah, these countries are all going to do this. And the easiest one that I think I can explain to you guys with that is a lot of us think, and at least have experienced, if we raise the temperature really high on a tank, the cysts tend to kind of die back. At a certain temperature, they'll die, right? So there's countries where the weather is always really hot, and if water temperature is always that hot, ick is just not going to thrive, right? So in theory, we could take a fish bred in a very warm water country, and we could get it right into our fish tank, and there'd be like zero chance it would have ick. Unfortunately, though, different countries specialize in breeding different fish. So, the water might have been hot there, but also really hard. So maybe they're doing lots of livebearers and African cichlids and not so much tetras and that kind of stuff, right? And you've got, let's say, China doing tetras. Well, let's say we have, a guppy or a swordtail from Thailand. We've got cardinal tetras coming in from China, and they're going to land in the same tank. Now, we know that probably the Thailand fish doesn't have ick, but we can't guarantee that the cardinal tetras wouldn't carry it. And thus, when you put them together, it's actually worse because the fish from Thailand have never seen ick before. They have zero immunity to it. So it actually is more of a problem. Now that goes with so many different types of fish. Like bettas, for instance, we typically at home don't quarantine a betta, but really that's being quarantined before we ever get it. So let's say in Thailand again, we've got a betta in a bottle. It lives its whole life there, and then it's going to get sold. It's going to be put in a bag that's about this big with about an inch of water and a little bit of methylene blue. We're going to ship that, let's say stateside if you're watching in the United States. Now it's going to land. A lot of times that will never even leave the bag at a wholesaler. From there, it'll go to a store, right? Once it lands at the store, maybe it gets into a cup. All right? So in that process, that fish has literally never seen another fish in its life in terms of diseases and all that kind of stuff. Now, when you add that to an aquarium, let's say you've got a 20-gallon tank, it's got some cardinal tetras and that kind of stuff, and you put that fish in there, all of a sudden you can get an outbreak of disease, bacterial infections, that kind of stuff. So, that's one thing to think about, is even fish that are sterile can catch it from your own fish. So even if you know, well, I got this from a high-end breeder, or I got it from my store and they're quarantining, you can't know that your fish aren't carrying something. And like this happened, I want to say in the 80s and 90s, and maybe even up to the early 2000s. We had basically like koi pox, we had discus AIDS, we had angel AIDS. These are basically super illnesses that we don't have a cure for. And once they start spreading, the only answer is to kill the fish. And so we've also got something locally here in Washington called the Cascade crud. There's no cure for it other than it spreads between koi. And so when there's like a known infected pond, no fish can go in or out of there because it will contaminate other people's stuff. And when it does get out, it's very maddening for, like, let's say the show scene. If you ever watch any of the koi videos that we do, all the quarantine, well, no, all the show ponds are their own quarantine. Typically, only your own fish go into that pond, right? And then they get sterilized after the show. And so all that, because, and they're like at the shows, they have to be, I think, at least 4 feet apart so that any splashing from a koi doesn't land in the other bins. It's to minimize that. And some of the very high-end shows, they actually have dividers and everything. So yeah, so we can understand how mixing fish together can mix diseases. Even stuff that should have been clean now gets sick from something we thought was clean. In the wild, fish live with parasites and bacteria and all that stuff all the time. But because it's not in such high quantities, it doesn't bring the fish down. So, like in our aquarium, for instance, if we have ick, the ick cysts on the fish, then it's going to fall off, right? And then it's going to hatch and reattach to a fish. Well, in the wild, if you have an ick cyst, it drops off, and the fish swims 2 miles down the river, it doesn't attach itself to the same fish. So that's how it doesn't necessarily break down the immune system on that one specific fish like it would in an aquarium. So we have to do some extra things to prevent that. And one of them is observation. Now, that's one of the best things we can do is, first, let's try to minimize what we're bringing into our own aquariums. So maybe it came from a fish store, maybe it's coming from online, maybe, it's from a friend or a breeder. Bring it in and start learning about that fish. Look at it. Does the, like in the thumbnail picture that we had on this thing, does it have a white spot on there? Or does it have a couple of milky gray scales? Or does it look like someone's been biting on his tail? All of those things are indicators that something might be wrong. And in general, we don't want to run multiple tanks because we'd rather just have 2 fish tanks with awesome fish. But long term, we will end up spending more money on meds and fish that we kill by not quarantining. So it's one of those, like, it makes sense. It's really hard to do, It's kind of like never speeding on the freeway ever. It's like, well, sometimes you just got to get there to the taco stand, you know what I'm saying? But if you have one tank, and it gets easier. Like if you have 20 aquariums and you set up one 10-gallon tank, that's way easier for quarantine. If you only have one aquarium and then you set up a quarantine tank, most people end up with 2 aquariums. So, kind of know that. But so we're going to go through a quarantine period, and I want to be clear here that quarantine typically means in a different body of water. You could, have like a breeder net and quarantine a fish in there to watch it, but that's not a good idea because if it brought any kind of illness in, it's going to spread throughout the aquarium. So, usually it's a different water source. Now, on top of that, when you're quarantining, you'll want separate nets. You'll want kind of a separate siphon if you're doing water changes and that kind of stuff over there. And in advanced situations, let's say you have a fish or a group of fish, you really like them. Let's say you got 20 cardinal tetras in your display tank and you've got 20 cardinal tetras in your quarantine tank. It's a good idea, once you think the ones that are in quarantine are very healthy, to take 2 or 3 from the main tank and add them to the 20. Most often people just get all 20 and add them to the display tank. But it's very common in koi and goldfish and that type of stuff, where we're going to bring some of our prized fish, very few, to the new fish so that we can see, are they going to get each other sick? Even though there was nothing that we could visually see, we didn't see any problems, that type of thing. It's very, I see this happen in so many industries, and like, what do I want to say here? If you become, let's say, a guppy nerd, a koi nerd, a discus nerd, like a specific species, if you really, really love that, you'll see in that species the problems that crop up. So, like, for instance, in guppies, which I really like, a lot of them are being bred overseas, and they'll use UV sterilizers, and they'll make the water so pure, like there's no disease at all, there's no gravel, like there's hardly any bacteria in these systems, that once they come to a normal tank, they're just getting attacked by all of these, little pathogens that wouldn't take an average fish down. A fish that is used to dealing with a immune system that really needs to fight stuff off does well, but one that has an immune system that's never been challenged really falls apart. So there's that going on. But then there's a whole, I guess, conversation that I really want to talk about today, and that is, in a perfect world, we might not ever have to quarantine. So if we always knew our fish are coming from this farm, and it goes to this wholesaler, and they only ever buy fish from that farm, and then we only ever buy fish from that wholesaler, if people have done their homework and we've gotten rid of parasites at the farm, it would have never traveled. Now, unfortunately, that's not really a realistic scenario, because wholesalers, the people I buy fish from, make their money on variety. So, you got stuff coming in wild, you got stuff coming from every continent, you have stuff coming from local breeders. That's mainly the sources, really. So, between those three, it's this giant, soupy mess of diseases. And in tanks, both at your house and at a wholesaler, when you move fish out, you can still leave diseases behind. Now at home, if you're moving fish out into your display tank, that's not really a problem, because if they're sick, your other fish are getting sick, and that tank's sick, like you were just all sick. But at a wholesaler, if you bring some fish in and they die, or you sell them and the illness is still there, and then you bring new fish in, now we're contaminating that new fish, right? So same thing could go on in your home quarantine tank. Let's say you brought some fish in, they all die. If you can really not figure out what it is, like if you have zero idea, then it's dangerous to bring in the next fish, because you could give it straight to them. Now, if that scenario happens, what you might want to do is, like, we mostly deal in community tanks on this channel, I guess, but maybe you try, let's say it was African cichlids, and you're like, oh, you lost them all to a problem. Maybe you bring in one African cichlid and see, how does this do? Don't bring in 10 more, like limit the exposure. And you can break it down with, and use either soap or chlorine or bleach, or I think people are starting to use hydrogen peroxide now as well. But at the same time, you kill all the good and bad bacteria. And I watch novice aquarists, like, they have an illness and their fish die, then they sterilize the tank, and then the fish that they get next end up dying to ammonia poisoning. So it's not best to always sterilize an aquarium once you move fish through it. You can do some Googling and figure out, like, oh, pretty much at 80 to 85 degrees at 14 days, if I lost all my fish to ick, it probably will not be in that aquarium anymore. Kind of the same thing. We could dose a lot of salt, and it would probably kill off any velvet we've got going on. So you can do a little bit of Google foo and not have to reset each time. And yeah, so then it comes down to, let's say you've got fish in your quarantine, you're observing them, and now you see a disease. Then you have to start using meds. And one of the most important things, I think, if you're going to have a quarantine tank, have meds on hand, right? So like if you're already setting up that like fish could get sick, let's not wait until we see the disease and then go, wonder where I could get the meds that are going to treat this, right? So everyone should have basically an antibiotic, you know, a bacterial infection. We should have something to fight fungus, right? And we should have something to fight parasites, both internal and external. If you have those, you've covered most bases. Now, that being said, like the trio that I use, which is like erythromycin, ICX, and General Cure, handles a lot. But then there's things like Velvet. Those don't really handle Velvet, so I use cupramine or salt for that. One of the reasons I really love quarantine tanks is that if we don't put plants in there, then we can use salt. And salt is really good at being antibacterial, antifungal, and antiparasitic all at the same time. You know, but in our plant tanks that we typically love, that is very, very detrimental. So I do keep salt around. We do use it. And all of our quarantine tanks at the store pretty much don't run plants. There's a couple. Sometimes you get a weird fish that like needs a hide, if you will. But plan like something's going to go wrong. And so, like, let's say you have a 10-gallon quarantine tank. Don't buy, like, the chintziest heater. Like this heater right here. Not that this is chintzy, but this Marina C25 is meant for, it's 25 watts. It's meant for a 6-gallon aquarium. Don't use this to heat that aquarium. Buy something much stronger. So get maybe like a 200-watt heater. So that way, if you are battling some illness where you want to raise the heat, you can do that in a timely manner instead of like, oh, geez, I'm just really struggling to get it to go up, right? So plan ahead with the quarantine tank. And I realize it costs money and all that, but it's like, almost like a one-time investment. Meds, if you never had to use them last a couple years. That being said, the expirations, I personally don't abide by them. Like if I have, I don't think I have any meds in here, but if I had something that said it expired in 3 months, I would still use it. Like I would use it after the fact, because meds, if they're stored correctly, they by the FDA typically have to get an expiration date. That's for like human consumption and vets and that type of stuff. In my personal experience, I've never had a problem using a med that was expired of the meds that I use. I am sure that there are meds that are very sensitive to that, but the ones that I use, I don't run into that problem. So I know some people were asking about that. So some other people are asking about quarantining plants. You definitely could. What I find the problem with plants is everyone that wants to have a quarantine tank wants to quarantine plants in there, and they want to quarantine fish in there. And at the point where you're quarantining plants and fish, you've just set up an aquarium. That's what you've done. So ideally, you would have a plant tank and you would have a fish tank, both in quarantine, if you're really serious about doing that. Now, we're pretty serious about doing that at the store. We have two different, well, at least in the warehouse, we have two different plant systems, and they run UV sterilization, and we run some canaries in the mine shaft, if you will. So we have some shrimp in there, we have some ottos, we have some Siamese algae eaters, and Florida flagfish. Now, the reason we have those fish and snails and shrimp is so that if we were ever to get plants that came in and we put them into the system and they had been treated with like an algicide or some kind of chemical when they came into the United States, we would see that before we ship out hundreds of plants and kill everyone's stuff, right? So we take that very seriously. Now, it would be better if we had like all these live plants and all these fish, like it would absorb ammonia, but you can't, in my opinion, you can't effectively treat fish as well as you possibly could while trying to keep plants alive. There are just too many times when you need a quarantine tank and you're like, oh, I got to use salt and I got to use this, you know, or I got to use these two meds. I know one of them, like cupramine's kind of hard on the plants. You know, there's just times you need to do that. And when it comes to plant quarantine, my favorite setups that I watch people do would be like one pea puffer, and then you put the plants in and you fertilize it and you have a good light. And mostly the people are doing that, they don't want snails, which I'm a fan of snails, but they can get rid of all the snails, and they maybe quarantine for like 6 weeks, so any snails would hatch out, and their puffer could get that, and then when they go to the main tank, it would be very unlikely they'd bring snails across. Now, the pet, like, when it comes to plants, in my opinion, the things to worry about are not snails. They're not, let's say, pesticides being used. They're mostly easy to get rid of contaminants, and that would be things like duckweed. Like maybe you don't want duckweed in the display tank. That's not so hard to get rid of. Snails, you can get rid of those too. You know, like I personally don't quarantine any plants that ever go into my systems. So much so that includes even like my display tanks, like my puffers and that kind of stuff. I personally have never encountered. I've never even encountered a pesticide with a mass die-off or anything like that. I've literally never encountered a bad plant experience. That doesn't mean it could never happen. I've just never witnessed it. And so that's why I don't set up a separate quarantine myself. The other thing is too, like, a lot of these plants, depending on where you're buying from, like, if you're buying bunch plants, those are literally grown out of the water at a farm. They grab it, they cut it, they put a rubber band on it, they throw it in a box, they ship it to your store, that store throws it in a tank, and then you buy it. The odds of it picking up something is so low, unless you were like, oh geez, look at all these fish with, you know, a disease in there, you know. Yeah, so when it comes to feeding in a quarantine tank, I tend to only use frozen foods. You know, every once in a while you gotta, you know, make an exception because maybe they won't eat it. But I want something that is very nutrient dense, and then I want it so that it would be easy to get back out with a net. So frozen bloodworms, frozen brine shrimp. I typically run bare bottoms in my quarantine tank when I can. Like at the store I can't because I have to have some crushed coral so that we can buffer the water up. But that makes it really easy. Like, oh, the fish aren't eating because of the meds. Let me get that back out. You know, and you can see bodies. We don't want them fall and be like if you had rocks, like a big rock, like a cave in there, or plants, you can get fish that'll die and you won't notice. So I recommend bare bottom for quarantine myself. Yeah, I think I like a lid. Definitely a lid seems very important because fish, when they come into your possession, they're kind of flighty, they're scared, and you know, even though you might be like, well, I've had cardinal tetras in the main tank and it's rimless and no top for years, that doesn't mean the new ones you brought in won't be jumping because they're scared. Maybe they're wild caught, you know, maybe they're just like there's a shadow on that tank, that type of thing. So I definitely recommend a lid, tight fitting lid for sure. And I like to use a sponge filter. That's just me because it's a gentle flow, especially if you get some fish. Like let's say you get some Corydoras in that have internal tapeworms and they're very skinny. I want gentle flow in there, and then I just, you know, I want to deworm them, and I want to put foods in, and want to make it easy so they're not having to swim against a current. You know, what's actually bad sometimes is you can get the current going so well they want to spawn, so that you trigger them to spawn because they're coming into new water and doing all these things. Meanwhile, you're like, no, you need to stop spawning. You need to eat and rest because you're gonna die. You know, and that'll happen sometimes when you've got, let's say, a store had 12 stir-by Corydoras. 6 of them were for 2 weeks ago, and then they got 6 more in, and they just put them all in the tank. And when you bought them, they caught them out, and you got kind of like 3 and 3. 3 are super skinny, and then 3 are, you know, nice and plump and maybe trying to lay eggs. So, you know, there's all these weird scenarios, and in every one of them, pretty much, it always comes back to like, well, if we were quarantining, that got easier. It doesn't make it, you know, there's no work and will never be a problem. It just in general makes it easier than if it's in your main display tank. That's all it's doing. So I'm a big fan of it. I do it at the store. I wish more of it was being done. Typically, in my opinion, from the wholesalers I see, fish are coming in and like, so this is, I guess this is something I think about. Most wholesalers that I've seen, they're getting fish in, they're throwing some meds in the water, and then maybe holding them up to 1 week before they start shipping them out. Now, there's a lot of them that say they do that, and you can watch them ship it out way before it's been a week. You know, so I realize I do the same thing. We get fish in, and then we medicate for a week, and then we bring them out onto the sales floor. My logic is, if at least the person before we buy it is putting meds to them, at least for a day or two, then they come into us and we put meds to them, the odds are a lot better that we'll have a healthy fish out on the show floor. Now, a lot of the fish we might have excess backstock, so it will, not be quite an issue. But then there's some that we run through faster than you expect, and it only gets that 1 week. And so, I wish, from talking to people that are older in the hobby than I am, working at a store, they tell me the story of like, I remember when a wholesaler actually like quarantine the fish and they'd feed them and they'd sit on them, get them healthy, and you just brought them right in and you sold them. And I've never been in the industry in a time where that was really happening. I still have to quarantine every single fish we buy because they're not stable enough. Now, I could probably run, like with one of the wholesalers we buy a lot from, I could probably run 80% or more that would do well, and there's 20% that's not going to do well. But we can make up like another 15% by using meds. So then there's still like 5%, no matter what we can do, not going to go well. But that's just kind of the business. You can't always, we're not good enough to figure out what's always wrong, because there's so many illnesses. All right, let's see here. Someone asked medicated food. Me personally, I am not a fan of it. The only time I think it makes sense, and this is me personally, is when there's only one fish in the quarantine tank. Because the minute you have more than one, we can't guarantee how much meds each fish is getting, right? You have the whole problem of like possibly one getting way too many meds. Possibly no one's gonna eat it at all. I in general default to treating the water column because I can, basically I know what's going to happen with that. Now there are some advanced techniques, and I myself have only ever attempted it like once, but I think it's called gavenge. Basically, you would have a blunt tipped syringe, so basically it wouldn't stab, and you can load meds and food and that kind of stuff in there and get it into the throat of a fish. And you can basically force feed them, and to get the meds in that way, it can be more effective. But it's a very difficult thing on a lot of the smaller fish that I play with, and so I don't have a lot of experience with it. But and then with like really big fish, they typically just inject a fish with like an antibiotic or something like that. So it gets this weird like, we had a local club member that would do it for all the plecos and that kind of stuff, and she always had really healthy stuff, and she was a vet tech. And that was really nice to confer with her and just learn, but it wasn't something that was always practical either. So not everyone is gonna, do gill scrapings and fecal smears and that kind of stuff. Like, she was fanatical about it, but her fish were awesome. So, all right. Brian asks, I know you have fish coming in the door each day at the shop. How do we keep our quarantine tanks cycled when we're not quarantining? Should we always keep some hardy fish in the tank? So that is like an idea, right? If you always had something in there, like, I'm trying to think of a good fish. Like maybe you had like 3 corridoras. I mean, that's not the best, but if I think longer, I could think of something. But if you took all the other fish from the last quarantine out and they went to the main tank, didn't get sick, right? And then you bring new fish in, and everything, and those corridors get sick, like, ooh, these guys could potentially get everything sick. I better really be careful here. But when it comes to a quarantine tank for me, I end up changing a lot of water, but then also I let the mulm build up. I run, quote unquote, very dirty quarantine tanks. So, like, in a perfect world, I don't even want to rely on filtration. I want algae. Like, a quarantine tank with 3 sides that are covered in algae, and the bottom, because you don't have any gravel, those are just caked in algae. They're going to consume ammonia. They're going to process that water for you. And then when you bring in that pleco or a shrimp or autosynclus or reticulated hillstream loach, like, that food is so key to those guys. Now, in that specific scenario, you would want some filtration. If they're going to eat all that, they're basically eating your filtration. But in general, that's what we do. Like we have an air stone or we have a sponge filter in there. We don't rely on it to process ammonia though. It's essentially just there to add air, and it's for us. It becomes a, well, why not let it be a sponge filter? We don't plan like it's doing the majority of any work though, because that leads you to sometimes a bad path. Like we're like, oh yeah, well we really, because what we'll do sometimes we get a disease that we can't cure. We'll load up 10 pounds of salt, like it was put insane amounts of salt in there and let it water change through, and that will pretty much sterilize almost anything. And so, which also sterilizes the beneficial bacteria. So we just, in general, we will treat it like it doesn't have filtration. And that's a safer way, I think. Treat it like you can't rely on that filter, but know that that filter is helping you. Same thing. Like this analogy might work. Treat it like like if you're driving, you're gonna get in a wreck. Treat it like the seat belt's not gonna save your life, and just try to avoid a wreck. If you do get in a wreck, there's a chance that will save you, or at least help. Kind of that same thing with the filtration there. There's a chance it will help if you fall behind, but rely on it like it's not doing anything. All right, let's check in with some of the super chats. We're 31 minutes into this shindig. And my head's still foggy. Let's see, where do I go? I go right here. What wholesalers do you like? What's their differences? So what I find is most wholesalers started just like you and I. There's someone that loved fish, right? And in general, they'll bring in some fish, they'll start doing better, and when they start doing really well, they'll be heavy-handed towards what they really like. So, like, if I was opening up a wholesaler, I might be like, wow, you've got 70 different types of live bearers, right? So, in general, I'd be live bearer heavy. I'd still carry a bunch of other stuff, but I would be live bearer heavy. And then in my mind, I'd be really good at seeing, guppy diseases and making sure they have hard water and doing all that kind of stuff, right? And then you might have another wholesaler who really loves African cichlids, right? And they might not care about live bearers or shrimp or tetras. Like, they have them because every wholesaler basically ends up keeping almost everything, but that's not their specialty. It's not their forte. So that's where the differences I see in wholesalers is like, what are they into? What is the owner passionate about? Because that resonates through what they care about in the wholesale side. And I think it matters, Not that someone who loves African cichlids can't have good German blue rams, but someone who goes and collects at Peru every year might really love German blue rams and really take care of them. Not always true, but, could be. Do I quarantine any differently between the stock, my store, and my fish at home? No. Same quarantine trio. Mostly I quarantine at the store, and then from there I go straight into my aquariums. The only thing I do a little bit different is I try to do like one tank, one fish. So when I want fish, I'll set up the tank, I'll figure out everything I want to do, I'll quarantine at the store, and then I'll put them in there. And then rarely, except for like the 800 gallon, is it like, oh, I'm just going to keep adding and taking away. Like, I don't do that often in there either, but usually in small enough aquariums where I can quarantine enough, then I'll quarantine it all and just add it all at once and be done. As opposed to, like, oh, I'll buy 5 tetras and 5 tetras and 5 tetras and 5 tetras. Each time you add fish, you're increasing the risk, right? So let's say you were going to drink, no, let's I need a different analogy. Let's say you had some chicken in your fridge and it's one day after expiration. You're like, well, what if this gets me sick? Like, you're better off doing it once and eating all of that chicken than eating like just a little bit of that chicken over and over and over again, where you're like, oh, every week I kind of keep missing this sell by date. Well, maybe not sell by date, but like the expiration date. Like, eventually you're gonna get sick. It's just odds, right? Even if there's very low odds, it's gonna happen. So you're better off to like kind of just rip that band-aid off, do it all at once, be like, all right, I'm gonna eat all this chicken and never do that again because it's dangerous. Maybe you shouldn't eat the chicken at all. Kind of the same thing. Like, maybe we should just quarantine our fish. But if we weren't going to, all at once is statistically a better spot to be at. Fun with Fish asks, is a little bit of rust okay in an aquarium? I suspect it is. Back in the day before we had fertilizers, and I say we, this is before my time, we as in the overall aquarists, they would put nails in substrate so that they would rust and provide iron to plants. So I would have to think some of it is okay. That being said, I have zero idea on toxicity levels. Also, like the right type of, let's say nail. Like, oh, it's rust, but it's also doing this, got zinc in it or something. Like, oh, I don't know. All right. Will Ed says, is the quarantine medicine for fish the same for shrimp, and do you use something different? So shrimp are kind of their own thing, right? We can use Prozipro, so praziquantel or General Cure. We can use that with the shrimp, and that will help get rid of some. But then there's other things that we don't know how to cure at all yet. So unfortunately, let's say there's 15 shrimp diseases. Do I have that book? I have that book in here or not? Oh yeah, I think I do. So this is a book that is I got it in Germany from the guy that wrote it at his store. And he did lots and lots and lots of studies, and he's made all of his own meds. See if I can find any. It's not in English, so that's not going to help us that much, but I just saw them. So like right here, he made all his own meds for specifically shrimp, right? And so I was asking him if he'd found like the absolute cure for L-biopsidae, and he said to the best of his knowledge, and I was able to confirm this with like 2 other people since then, that the magic trick is food soaked in methylene blue and then fed to the shrimp, and that should do it in theory, right? But that is, I haven't been able to test that out. And the thing is, that guy had like 30 different meds for shrimp. There was a lot of different things, and it kind of boiled down to the same thing we deal with in fish. You basically had bacterial infections, and that's where the shells will be kind of a milky white, and then you have parasites. Those are the 2 main ones. You can have like Vorticilla, that's going to be the spiky one on the head. L-biopsidae is going to be like greenish or yellowish like fungus on their swimmerets. That's their little legs down there. And then you've got bacterial stuff, but then there's all this other stuff that I'm not enough of a shrimp nerd to actually know. Like there's just internal worms and like that kind of stuff that you got to really know what you're doing. And a lot of people will bring their shrimp to this guy in Germany to diagnose what's going on, because he's kind of made it his thing, and that's something to respect. Like, a lot of people might say that Michael Wolfinger might not know everything about shrimp disease, but no one has to know everything. If this guy knows 10 shrimp diseases, he's 10 times better than I am, right? Like, a lot of people go, that guy doesn't know about one thing. It's like, well, but if he knows about a lot of other things, that's kind of, it's a work in progress. The gentleman's like about as old as I am, so maybe in his 30s. So maybe by the time he's 60, he's got all the shrimp figured out. Yes, I have a book in German I cannot even read, because it was useful enough for the pictures on the diseases of shrimp. And I knew I could like Google it from there. Like if I ever saw it, I go, okay, let me Google that. Let me try to get it in English. So yeah. Daniel McCoy says, I've just started with Planet Tanks. I'm looking for some recommendations for doing CO2. I've got a 10-gallon and need a different light. Let's see. But am going to set up a 55 high-tech. So first thing I would say is buy a decent regulator. Like we sell the CO2 art ones. They're pretty good. You can get cheaper ones, but make sure it has a solenoid. Like, okay, let me just back up here. The spots to spend money on a regulator would be solenoid and needle valve. Like those are very, very important. So you want to make sure they have good versions of each of those. And then like if you know you're an addictive personality, get one that's expandable. So like the CO2 art one that is like the Elite as it's called. It can expand to do 5 tanks at a time, right? Really nice. Each one's got its own needle valve. Super cool. A little bit more expensive. You know, one of the other things too is kind of look at warranties. Like the Elite, I think, has a 10-year warranty, and then like our Pro has a 5-year warranty. And then you can look at like Milwaukee regulators, which, you know, they're pretty much doorstops. You know, they work for like 8 months, and then it's like, ha, yeah, you bought a Milwaukee, you fool. You know, kind of one of those deals, unfortunately. So yeah, I would say get a good one. You know, we sell some decent ones in my opinion. You could go with Greenleaf Aquariums, which that'd be a very high-end one. In my opinion, ours are at that level without the price. You could go on like planettank.net. There's people that build really high-end regulators, but you almost have to be like a little bit of a techie to like understand what you're getting. And for the most part, most people just want to buy something off the shelf, and that's what I provide. What's my opinion on using the tank transfer method? I never used it, but I've heard of it working in freshwater. Hold on. What is your opinion of using the tank transfer method? I don't know if I know this. Tank transfer method. Maybe, are you talking about like actually taking it home, like in, let's say, a cooler or something, instead of... Yeah, I don't know. You have to... I'll scroll down and we'll see if someone can point out that message, because I'm not digesting it. My brain is not comprehending, so I don't know a lot about it. So, yeah. How long till this filter starts to take effect and work? Well, it'll start moving almost right away. In terms of bacteria, as soon as about 12 hours. But, you know, it depends on... In an aquarium, studies have shown that bacteria can replicate about every 16 hours, so it can double. With not in an aquarium, but just in general, bacteria can do it every 8 hours. You know, the same bacteria. But in our aquariums, there's a little bit of hindrance there, so about 16 hours. So if you have a cycled tank, it will start having an effect for biological capacity in about a day. Now that being said, if you didn't have an air stone, it will have an effect within about 20 minutes of oxygenating the water. So let me chime back in with if I can find anything from the tank barn. I don't see it. All right. Guppy shimmy, could you discuss the cause? Barbara Jackson. So typically, so let's go back to thinking about Thailand and other foreign countries, right? Where we're going to breed live bears. In those countries, fresh drinking water is not nearly as available as it is here. It also costs more, it's a more limited resource, and there typically is a lot more salt water available, right? So, if you had this farm and you knew that guppies benefited from a higher pH and hardness in the water, and that they wouldn't get any parasites and diseases because the water was brackish, that might be a smart way to breed those things. Save on water, and you get all those benefits. Then, you kind of throw them into fresh water, let them sit there for a week, scoop them up, and ship them to the United States or wherever they're going in the world. If they land at a spot that doesn't have very hard water, mostly organs, liver failure, that kind of stuff starts setting in. And that's where the fish just kind of are doing this. They can't regulate very well. They're not feeling good. And it works fine in really hard water states. And then like somewhere in Washington where we have very soft water for me, they just fall apart. And that's why you see it happen in mollies a little bit more, because they're treated more as a brackish water fish than, let's say, swordtails, platies, and guppies. But molly is very susceptible to it. So, yeah. Welcome, new member, Austin2712. What specific wholesalers do I use and why them? Not going to tell you. And it's actually not that I would never tell you. It's that I don't want people to, like, Google foo them and then harass them. Like when thousands of people go, hey, he said, you know, ABC company, let me find them. And then they're like, what have you done? We're just being jam-packed with people that have no intentions of purchasing several thousands of dollars of fish each week. So, you know, if that was something you were actually interested in and you were actually already in business and you had wholesalers you're already using, we could talk. You know, that's kind of the entry level of like, you tell me who you're using and show me reseller's permit and orders you've done. And then I can try and help you find some wholesalers that might work well in your water conditions. Because just because things work well in my water doesn't mean they'll work good for you. So, all right. Rafael Espinoza. I was watching your talk on puffers and realized you said that there were an exception for aqua puffers, but did not specify which treatment. Should I still use General Cure and ICX? Yes. I'd have to watch my talk again. I mean, I've given it several times. I can't think of a specific exception. That doesn't mean I didn't say it in that talk. Like maybe my brain was like skipping, and then I was like, okay, I need to remind them about, you know, this food or something like that. But in my experience, they're not any more susceptible. I use the same meds on every fish. So, oh, I might have said with aqua puffers in general, I said sometimes you want to get weight on them before you treat them because they're captive bred and they're kept in like holding tanks. They beat on each other a lot and food is scarce. They got to compete for it. And so you might hold off deworming and all that kind of stuff and like get food into them. Get food into them ASAP and then start treating them. So it might have been that. I'd have to, you know, it's one of those things. It's hard to remember. Like, you know, you've done 4 billion talks, right? You know, between live streaming and that. Like, you said this one sentence once. What was the context? Like, oh, I think it was that though. I can't be sure though. Yeah, I read the question again just to make sure I didn't miss a key word there that was preventing me from giving a better answer. I've been looking into different canister filters. Would the Fluval FX4 be too much for a 75-gallon tank with a flower horn? Also, much guppy love for your videos. Help me a lot. I think you could do it. So, in my opinion, what you would do is run that FX4 and then build your own DIY spray bar, and then you'd really be like, yeah, this is the bee's knees. That's what I would do. Why don't aquarium stores sell seeded and cycled sponge filters? That's because the public is unbearable. Great truth. We've done it several times, and then people lose their minds if there was like one speck of duckweed, one snail egg. The minute you sell someone a cycled sponge filter, if their fish gets sick, no matter where they were buying fish from, it was your sponge filter. Like it's kind of a landmine. Like new aquarists in general are a landmine, and they're very difficult to deal with typically because let's say they buy that cycled sponge filter, and then they're like, well, I bought a cycled sponge filter, and then I bought 72 arowanas, 9 flower horns, an Oscar, 16 tetras, and a Pictus catfish. Stuff's dying. What do? You know, like that's like, well, there's so many things wrong there. You know, and then there's the whole, well, I went to the other store. They said it had to be your sponge filter was sick. You know, and then you're trying to like explain why that wouldn't be, and like, well, it came out over here and that type of thing. So it's like we will sell them by request. Usually it's intake sponges. Like if you buy the canister, the hang on back, we'll sell you a sponge to kind of jumpstart it, but it always has to come with a conversation of just because, you know, this thing has some bacteria doesn't mean it can handle everything. And I think that's why most stores don't, is the backlash of like, you sold me this thing and then I couldn't just buy all the things and now it's a problem. You know, it's just not worth it. So, and there are stores that are shadier than that like only want to sell you additives too. You know, like we've been testing sponges at the warehouse to see if we can ship out sponges, but again, it's like we'd have to keep it absolutely duckweed free, absolutely snail free, absolutely shrimp free, absolute, like it's so easy to make the general public mad. It's seriously so easy. We had a person today that was very angry that they watched a video on sponge filters, then they bought a sponge filter from our website that was not the one in the video, and then it didn't have the same internals. And I'm just kind of like, yeah, that's not our fault. You know, you bought the wrong thing. You know, but they're very angry, demanding. You know, I can't believe this would happen. Like, yeah, I don't know what to tell you. You know, you watched the commercial for a Big Mac, and then you went and bought a quarter pounder, and then you were angry you didn't have lettuce. I don't know what to tell you. All right, we've made it through the super chats. We got BG as a new member, and Evan, crazy last name. It's almost like, I want to say it's like Freischner. 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 That's what I'm going with. Yes. Thank you for all the super chats. If you aren't a member yet, just become a member instead of the super chats. I'm telling you. Build an army of puffers. Let's see here. Navarre is sitting in a teriyaki parking lot in the University District of Seattle, waiting for the girlfriend to get out of class. All right. That doesn't look weird at all, I'm sure. People looking in like, what's that guy doing? Would the Dennerle Nano Bio CO2 set be good for a 20-gallon tank? It would be on the lower end. So, can it be done? Yes, for sure. Just know that it's like way more potent for like a 10-gallon and under. And it's a great place to start, but realize that what I hate about that systems like that is if you're successful, you instantly want to just get something better and you've wasted like $30. That being said, if you're not successful and you hate it, you just saved like $100, right? So it's kind of that weird, yeah, you know, it is useful. And like Jimmy ran a whole tank running it and it worked great. But I'm a guy that goes straight to the pressurized CO2. Yeah. Does erythromycin, ICX, and General Cure have any negative effect on shrimp? All right. Everybody on 3 say this with me. All right? You're going to say, Corey uses General Cure, ICX, and erythromycin on every fish, snail, and shrimp that comes through the store. Ever. And I've said it in every video. It's snail safe. Yes. Yes, yes. In my experience, I've used these meds. We're talking, like, with ICX, we're over 55-gallon drums at this point. Like, we're buying it, the last time we bought it 4 gallons at a time, pond strength. The answer is yes. Definitely. I would never, I can't say never, because there'd be some crazy scenario. I wouldn't be this free-flowing with, use these meds, guys, unless they've always worked for me. Now, I can't guarantee they'll work for you. You know, and in fact, whatever I just said, assume it'll kill everything you ever look at. But for me, it has done very, very, very well for many years. It cost me tens of thousands of dollars to develop, and I'm giving this to the hobby for free. And daily, we still answer insane amount of emails about it. Even when I'm like, did you watch the video? And they're like, yes. And I'm like, did I say I use it on every single fish? And there was plant, shrimp, and snail safe. And they're like, yeah. And then I'm kind of like, so what do you think the answer is? Except I'm way more polite and I just go, yes, yes, it will be safe. Don't worry. Go ahead. All right, the tank transfer method is moving the fish to a new clean water every 72 hours so the disease doesn't take hold. I see. I think that would work really well with parasites and internal tapeworms, the fish tank barn, but like with things that are on the fish, like let's say a bacterial infection, I think that'll just go with it. So I think, yes, kind of the same thing when you're treating ick. If you're gravel vacuuming all the time, then you're going to pick up those cysts and it's going to alleviate the load. It won't eradicate it, but it'll alleviate and speed up that process. I think that's kind of a same thing you've got going on there. Also, you'd have to have a lot of tanks or containers to pull that off. Clown knife water parameter advice. Keep it like 7.2-ish. Moderate hardness, moderate KH. And yeah, they can go quite a spread. Most people kill them by feeding them feeders. That's the truth. Justin's back at, or no, Austin's back in the hobby after 15 years. I don't even know what it's like. I didn't start keeping fish till I was like 22, I think. Is that true? I don't know. I think 22. But I've never stopped keeping fish since then. So I've never had a break. I should do that just to be like, oh man. What if you're a member and you super chat? Ooh. I don't tell you about that. That's just good times. Allison Dean, or is it Dane? New member? What's the breeding size of L66? Is that King Tiger? I have to Google that. I don't know. I want to make sure before I like go off on it, and then you're like, nah, dude, it's this one. L066 Pleco. Type in Citrus L066. King Tiger Pleco. Yep. Okay. So want to make sure. So what was it? Breeding size? So I guess I didn't even need to look that up because the answer to that question is not about the size at all. It's actually about maturity, sexual maturity. And on average, plecos like that, you're in the 14 months to 18 months range. You know, so they have to be sexually mature. And you can stunt fish and you can get that happening. But in general, they're about that 3-inch mark is when they start getting frisky, you know, trapping females in caves, or at least caving up, as they call it in the pleco world. Jackie Jacks, shout out to your staff. Came by the coop on a Saturday night. They were super awesome. Got a pair of Gardner Achilles. They're beautiful and so personable. Saturday night, where was I? Not there, maybe? Was I there? No, because I was there the night before with LR Brett's filming. Good to know. I always hope my employees have a good time working, and then people have a good time interacting with my employees. I know that we can't make everyone happy, but I think we get about 98%. So I'm glad to hear it, Jackie. The Fishy Mailman became a member. That's what I'm talking about. OG, Fishy Mailman. First time Faka Puffer in New Zealand. Hold on. First time Faka Puffer in New Zealand, 5 years. Limited weight on wooden floor off the ground. Minimum comfortable tank dimensions you would recommend, or in your opinion. Let me digest that. First time Faka Puffer, New Zealand. 5 years. Okay. So it's the first time, because I know it's hard to get fish into New Zealand. Okay, I got it. So you haven't been able to find one in a long time, and you're like, oh man, I got to get this thing. Got it. Limited weight on a wooden floor. It's off the ground. Okay, I understand that part. Minimum comfortable tank dimensions, in my opinion. All right. So I have no idea what building codes are like in New Zealand. So this can only come from my experience living in houses in America. In general, there's very general rules. If you pick an exterior wall, so that means a wall on the outside of a building. So like this wall right on this side that you can't see, not an exterior wall. This one, if I punched a hole, I'd be outside. In general, exterior walls are, they're more stout, basically. So if you put the tank against an exterior wall as opposed to an interior wall, less problems. Now, you also, the wooden floor is off the ground. If you can get under there, you got to worm your way under there, get under and look and see which way the beams run. Do they run this way or do they run this way? You want to make sure that the tank you put on touches as many of the beams as it can. You don't want it to like sit in between two beams. If a beam's here and a beam's here, you don't want the tank right here not sitting on any beams. Okay? So you want to try to get it on as many beams as possible. A lot of times, like in America, that it might only be 2 or 3 on a 6-foot tank. You know, and I have no idea what spacing is in New Zealand. But those are the general tips. And then for me, I don't worry. So this wouldn't be liters for you. This is going to be gallons. But I don't even start worrying in any house I've ever been in until it's above 125 gallons. So at 125, I don't worry about it. Above that, I start going, okay, how's this place built? Is it decent? Okay. So in that case, that's like what, like 600 liters roughly, or 550 liters? Or, yeah, 125 is 4.4, I think. So it's a little bit more than that. So that's the way I would do it, is like, you know, work the odds in your favor. Look at, okay, exterior wall. Okay, check. Which way are the joists running? Okay, check. And then like, oh, and that's, I guess, part of that last part is you're better off having a 125 gallon that's 6 feet long than you are a 125 gallon that's 4 feet long but taller, right? Because you want to spread out over more joists. All right. John G says, I've added a few green spotted puffers to a quarantine tank. One of the puffers is hanging real low and not eating much. He spits out food sometimes. It also doesn't have a round belly like the other two. Those, you basically, like, you just copy and pasted the Wikipedia for green spotted puffers of, like, internal tapeworms. So the first thing I would start with is deworming all of them. Yep, general cure, I'd start there. Keep feeding him worms. Hopefully, if his belly's too pinched in, you might be into a problem there, but hopefully he recovers. Instead of a $10 super chat, it's a membership in $5. Thanks for the podcast. That's what I'm talking about, Fishy Mailman. Yes. Instead of those $10 super chats, become a member. So I did learn this. I finally got another email back from the Google team. We are doing well. So we're not gamers, right? So we don't have nearly as many members as a gamer channel would have. But in terms of like not gamers, we're doing well. We're not like setting records or anything. But that's why they want to talk to me. Is they're like, huh? All your people don't just straight up ignore you. How you doing it? And have you tried this? And have you done these things? And so thank you for becoming members. That just I'm hoping it gives me some YouTube street cred with them. I don't know though. It's each day I wonder if they love or hate me. I think it's day to day. Okie doke. New member from Millie Gandalf. Daniel McCoy. Best 20-inch light. Budget 20-inch light for plants on a 10-gallon. All right. It's a light I don't sell. In my opinion, the best possible light for a 10-gallon is what's called the economy top. It's black, and it's got like these two little plastic things, and there's basically not very much between the water and it. It's really close, right? So then you take that, so it's called an economy kit, and then you put rad LED bulbs in there. Yeah, you can like customize it and play with it so much. It's really, really good. That being said, I don't sell any of those parts, but it's awesome. If someone wants me to order it in for the shop, we'll order it in if you're picking up locally. It's really good though. But they only make them for 10-gallon tanks. They might make it for a 5 also. But you can get some crazy power going in there for not much money. It's super cool. And you can play with the different colors and that kind of stuff. So Michael Sloan says, still unsure what membership does, but Corey helps the hobby so I can give back. Well, let me tell you what it does. First, it makes me feel good. 2, you get access to the community members only. What does that mean? That means I post dumb like pictures and memes, and coming up, there's going to be a member only video. What? Hold on, hold your horses. So a little while ago on the community tab, I asked you guys, ask me some questions, I'll answer them. And I filmed about an hour worth of questions. We basically we're going to split it up in half. The more serious questions come out on the main channel. Everyone gets to watch that. The more, like, funnier ones and that kind of stuff, like not so serious, go in the members section. Right? And I'll be the first to admit, I feel bad for anyone that doesn't have membership in their country. I understand. And all I can do is be like, man, that sucks. I'm sorry. That's all I can say. But you get those things, and you get these emojis, and you're gonna get like a reward for like being a long time thing. One time I gave out a discount code. There's some little things. The goal is to not do anything crazy though, because like what I was telling the YouTube guy is I was like, I don't want to take away from the main people, so I only want to add things on. And so one of the things I thought about is like I could let you guys watch the videos a day earlier and then put it public. I mean, I guess it just seems like a weak perk. So I don't want to take anything away from the current people. I just want to add in addition to, like, you get a little bit extra, a little bit of extra sour cream on the taco, I guess this is the best way I could think about it. And this might sound ridiculous after I'm done saying it. All right. Imagine you go to a restaurant and the food's good. Okay? And another person goes to the restaurant and the food's good. If there's one person that's tipping the wait staff and everyone really ridiculously well, they're gonna get like, well, make sure that guy gets extra guacamole, a little bit extra sour cream. Oh, hello, sir. How was that? Oh, wasn't perfect? Let me get that fixed for you right away. Like you're just getting those little bit of extras. That's really all it is. Like you still get that person still gets a perfectly fine meal. It's not like if something was wrong, they wouldn't fix it. It's mostly just like, well, here's a little bit extra, and that's basically the best way I could explain it. When are you doing a discount sale on most items on your store? We pretty much have phased most of that out. So what we've been doing is we've been lowering prices on the website and getting rid of discounts. So like like we did all the Hikari foods came down in price. A lot of plants came down in price. Like Miro moss balls, I think are $3.49. Used to be $5. Like we came down $1.50 on that. We've been looking and like we basically look at an item and go, where are we buying this from? Could we buy it somewhere cheaper? And does it make sense to go straight to the manufacturer and go, I'll buy $10,000 worth. Can you give me a better price? And if they say no, then I go, all right, let me go find another product. And we're just continually doing that to bring the price as low as we can. That being said, that leaves us no room to put them on sale. So either A, I can have the prices higher and then put them on sale, or I can just have lower prices. And we're going with that strategy now. It's just, look, it's just lower prices. All right. Got some new members. When using an air stone in a CO2 tank, you run the air stone all the time when the light and CO2 is off. Yes. So you especially want to run it when the light is off because plants consume oxygen and release CO2. But I run it 24/7 because you're going to gas off a little bit of CO2, but they're independent. And so you just turn the CO2 up a little bit more, and then you can have really high oxygen and really high CO2. We've got Chris H6693 and Random Robert Renditions became members. Kevin Zhao says, thanks. Would a 4 foot by 2 foot be all right for the first 5 years? With an FX6, 2 Aquarium 70s, would you recommend spending a couple hundred on a structural engineer, limited characters? Hey, no worries. So this is one of those things that, as someone on the internet, I should always be like, yes, you should spend money and have a professional out there to look at your situation. Then I'm going to follow that up and say, Corey, have you ever hired a structural engineer to look at your house before you put a fish tank in? No, I have not. I have never spent that money. But maybe you got a buddy. Maybe it makes some sense. I actually believe on your 4x2 tank, your FX6 would be enough alone. But I would run the FX6 and one Aquaclear 70, and I would use Aquaclear 70 with very fine filter media so that you could polish the water and kind of throw that out every other day and keep it super crystal clear. I don't think you need to, honestly. Make sure you have an air stone, by the way. DJ Pride, membering up. Welcome to the snail team. Random Robert. Oh, here we go. I just bought 2 to 3 foot lucky bamboo stalks to go in a tank. How do I treat them before they go into a tank? No container tall enough to dip. I don't dip any plants ever. So I get all the little gel off of it, put it right in. I've never had a problem. I've done plenty of bamboo forests. I'm just a guy that is... So, as a guy who runs an entire plant business, is a master aquatic horticulturist, and has touched an insane amount of plants, I have never once found a need to have ever dipped a plant. It's as simple as that for me. Derek Reynolds, welcome to the snail team. Candyman Cody, hey Corey. Is it okay to put a 40 breeder on a stand made for 75 if all the edges of the tank don't hang over the stand? Thank you for what you do. So let me process that. 40 breeder. Is it okay to put a 40 breeder tank on a stand made for 75? Ah, I see what you're getting at. So 75-gallon tank is going to be 4 feet long, 18 inches. 40 breeder is going to be 3 feet long, 18 inches. I see. Well, here's what I would do. If you put down a piece of plywood, like 3/4 inch plywood, put the tank on that, I think you'll be absolutely fine. That'll properly transfer the load. Without that, I've never tried it, but if you centered it, you might get a tiny bit of sag going there because really you want the corners to transfer the weight down those verticals, at the 4 foot level. But I think you would be fine as long as you put like a 3/4 inch piece of plywood on the top there, because I think that would spread it out enough that it would become a non-issue. Plywood's incredibly strong. When you look at those stands, you're like, dang, plywood can hold some weight. Welcome, Brian Kugler. I like that name. Any reason to make sure you put an air stone in a Fox puffer tank? You need to put an air stone in every tank. If I died tomorrow, all I want people to remember is put an air stone in your tank. In my opinion, it doesn't have to be an air stone, but a way to make air, and not a hang on back, nothing like that. It's like the cheapest method to make sure you have maximum oxygen in your tank and you get free circulation, and it breaks up any biofilm on top of the water. Like and it's such a cheap quintessential thing, and it kind of just looks cool. I honestly believe everyone should have an air stone in every aquarium. The only exception I can think of, well, and it already kind of has it. I was gonna say a saltwater tank with a protein skimmer, but they have the pinwheel injecting air anyway, so that's why you wouldn't have to have one. So. Oh, ooh, yeah, Jonah's doing the experiment, if you guys remember from a week or two ago. So, an update on the bio experiment. I switched from goldfish to bettas. 50% will get plant-based flakes, 50% will get fish-based flakes. I'll be checking for mass changes. Yeah, that'd be good, because, like, bettas are known to be carnivores. So I wonder what will happen. Like, without seeing the food, I can't know if there's, like, no protein in there. Well, there will be protein, but no like meat-based protein. I'd be interested to see. Yeah, I love to see people experimenting, because I totally want to talk to you, and you're like, yeah, so on year 7, here's all the things I found out, and it's like, yes, that's super cool. I would love to join the aquarium co-op team, looking for a new local job, and love everything about the hobby. I think we're technically considering hiring someone. We keep growing. No matter how much I'm trying to not grow right now, we keep growing. That being said, I always like to preface when someone applies, we're very like choosy in who we choose to fit in the team, and realize that when we say like we're hiring someone, there's like 100 candidates, you know, and so just please don't be super disappointed if you're not chosen. That doesn't mean you shouldn't apply or anything like that. I'm just like, sometimes I watch people get like super bummed out, and I feel horrible, you know. But I'm like, we, you know, like, so, like, we've got the managers and then me, and we kind of all vote like, well, who do we like? You know, who do we think? What about this thing? Oh, they live far away. Oh, they, you know, so we kind of like do like a pro and con list and see who we're gonna try out. And so you definitely bring a resume in. We haven't 100% put out the word like we're hiring. That being said, we just hired someone last weekend, but we kind of know we need another person anyway. They're only working the weekends. We're doing a little bit of restructuring, changing. And so the person we're looking for right now would work like 6 a.m. start time on the warehouse side. So, all right. Yeah, hit that like button, V-Stag says. That's what I'm talking about. How many people even showed up tonight to watch my headache marathon? I can't even find the right screen. 936 showed up today. Probably would have been more if I had done any advertising, which I didn't because I had a headache. But I appreciate you guys hanging out anyway. All right. 260,000 subs. When did that happen? I think it happened yesterday. No, 3 days ago. This last week's been a blur. Yeah. Ooh, I will show my new toys off. Look at my handmade clown loach. Super cool. Yes, I bought this, not paid or anything like that. The person that makes them is what, Paleo Plushie or something like that, out of Scotland, I think. And she makes, I assume it's she. It could be a he. I have no idea. They make them, and they're very limited quantities. They make like 8. And like for the last year and a half, I always miss out in the like the loach groups on Facebook. And every time by the time I click that button, they're always sold out. I also got this one. I just love it because it's so derpy. I've got this coolie loach. Like, who doesn't need a coolie loach on their shoulder? There we go. Yeah. Coolie loach. Focus on the coolie loach. There we go. Yeah, I just think these things are so cool. Like, a lot of work goes into, you know, like even getting the little pink undertone on the belly of them. And I don't know. I thought they'd be perfect for the backdrop, so I bought them. You know, they're ridiculously expensive. And that being said, they're custom made. I mean, that's just cool, I think. Is it bad to use Easy Green if I'm using root tabs as well? No, they're actually made to be used in conjunction. So yeah. Can you use levamisol as a preventative, or is it too strong for that? You can use levamisol. I've only used levamisole in my life, let's say like 40 times. So I can't say like 100%, yeah, that thing's never going to have a problem, but I've never really seen too many ill effects from it. And so, like, for instance, when Dean brought fish back, which that we filmed that tour, by the way, when he brought fish back from Peru, he put everything through levamisole twice. And everything, well, I don't want to ruin it, but lots of stuff was breeding. Why is my favorite loach the clown loach? Because they do funny things like, I was showing Jimmy the other day. I love it when they pick up a rock like it's a ball, and they run around the tank, and the other clown loaches chase them, and then grab that same rock out of their mouth, and then they run, and then the clown loaches chase them. It's like watching a little pack of dogs run around. So, I mean, don't get me wrong, I love a lot of loaches, but that personality is pretty hard to replace. You know, it's like having a little herd of puppies. So, that's why. First time here, I've been addicted to your live streams. I listen to them while trucking. Thanks for the wonderful content. Hey, hopefully it's not bad. I always wonder if I would have been a good trucker. I love driving, and I've done delivery before, but never like long haul or anything. But I feel like another career for me, like one, I would love to be a nurse, and I already do this. But a career of long haul truck driving, I wonder how long it takes before you reach like the end of the internet. Like, I just, in my mind, I'm always like, if you were just to listen to like podcasts and educational stuff after like a couple years, you'd be a genius. You know, not everyone's an auditorial learner, but I am. So I know it's like, oh, give me all those hours just to absorb information. Oh, yeah. Oh my gosh. I just read my wife's good burn. Braden, because if Corey didn't trim his nose hairs, he'd look exactly like a clown loach. True. How many silver tip tetras can you have in a 35 gallon? Probably like 50. I know someone's out there's freaking out right now. I keep 200 in a 20 gallon at the store. You know? Yeah. Chris is graduating from nursing school. Nice. I want to be a male nurse just because so aquariums in general attract nurses because the job is so stressful that they typically want to kind of relieve that stress, right? So I end up working with a lot of nurses, or at least I did in the store, right? And then like they always mention how they need more male nurses just because one, there's patients that only want males or female, that type of thing, and then two, it's nice to have, like, I already realize I'm walking myself into a corner I don't want to be in because someone's gonna call me a sexist. But what I'm trying to explain is, like, whether it's male or female, we need more nurses that have muscles to move, let's say, elderly patients, overweight patients, that type of thing. And so, yeah, I always just thought, like, I think I would have a good bedside manner, I think. And yeah, I never went down that path. While I was doing network administration, though, I shared some classes with people that were doing the RN program, and yeah, I enjoyed talking to them. What's the best way to fight blackbeard algae? Kung Fu. You get yourself some Siamese algae eaters. You get yourself some Florida flagfish, some Amano shrimp. Then you hit it with a little bit of, let's say, hydrogen peroxide or easy carbon. Basically, balance your tank, get someone eating on a little bit, and it'll go away long term. So, all right. What is my suggested stock for 229 gallon tanks on the same filtration? That's, I don't know, that's a question I don't even think I can answer. I just, at this point, I don't know if it's I don't have the patience for this question or like my brain just doesn't work. Like, I feel like a question that's so open-ended, like, it's like I look at that as almost like I'm thinking about buying a house. What should I? Like, well, what should you what? Or like, do you have anything going on? Like, could it, you know, should we set up like a Tanganyika biotope tank that's going to use, Shelley's, Calvis, and Chromis? Or should we do a planet tank? 2 planet tanks? Like, I guess when it's so vague, my eyes just glaze over after 4 billion comments and emails over the years. I'm just like, I can't even start to want to care on this. And I feel bad for even thinking that, but at the same time, like, if you're in person, I just know it's going to be so much work to tease out what you're actually trying to do on the internet. Or if you're in person, even if you go like, oh, I don't know what I want to do, then you can be like, well, do you like this fish? No, okay. Do you like this one? Okay, that one's okay. What about that one? And then pretty soon we could work our way there. But online, it's just like, oh, geez. Like in emails, that question will happen. I'm like, well, how about this? And they're like, no, I don't like those fish. Okay, well, what do you like? Well, I don't know. That's why I asked you. Like, okay, well, I can see where this is going. This is, and then I have to say, like, this is not the service we offer. Like, we're not just like show you a bunch of things and then you pick one out that we don't sell. And then they get all mad, like, I thought you were going to help. And I'm like, whoa, we are trying to help, but we need some kind of identifier there. So with 2 tanks stocked with the same filtration, yeah, that just already seems weird. Like, is it a sump system, in which case you want to avoid small fish? Are you going to use a land bridge, or not a land bridge, but a water bridge, in which case you could pick fish that would utilize that? Yeah, open-ended question, troublesome. Welcome, Dubes in the shower. In Hour? Dubes an hour? Dubes an hour. That's what it is. Dubes an hour. All right. Uh-oh. Tetra guy is a nurse practitioner and wants to become a fish store owner? Yeah, maybe. I don't know. If you like giving up all your money, do it. I always thought it was crazy, by the way. Like, so back when I was just a hobbyist, before I ever owned a store and I worked at a store, it would blow my mind the amount of money that gets made by a nurse that's on call. Because I would hang out with some, and I'd be like, you're getting paid to just hang out with me right now? Like, you're making money right now. It was such a foreign concept to me. And now that I work myself into a coma, basically, now I realize, like, oh yeah, $5 an hour. I wouldn't trade the little bit of freedom I have to, like, just know I might have to go in at any second. So now I sympathize more now that I'm a little bit older. I'm trying to say. What fish will utilize a water bridge in 229s? I've never made one. How did it go? Oh, have I ever made one? No, I've never made one because I don't think they're cool. They're basically a great place to grow algae that you can't get to. And then it's a great way to flood your tank the minute it loses suction, and if you do a water change and the water level goes down too much, then that's a problem. But the only thing I've ever really wanted to do is 55-gallon tanks that had tubes connected, though I thought those were a little bit cool. And in general, I always thought it would be cool to have a predator on one side and then a breeding colony of something on the other side. And then on one side of the bridge, you've got like something keeping out, let's say, the big swordtail adults, but then like the babies could go over and like feed the predator. So I think about stuff like that where I'm like, oh, how could I do a thing? But yeah, or maybe like scuds, or it's the same reason I want to keep saltwater. I love copepods, brine shrimp, all that kind of stuff. Amazing. I do want to bring Dorcula on more often. Right now, she had a little bit of an eye surgery, so it just looks like I beat her up. And the internet already thinks that I beat my wife, so that would just further that stereotype. But we'll have her on again for sure. I've been trying to get some more people on. We've been crazy busy, and the schedules aren't lining up. Like, I'm trying to get on to Joel Korvasoskin's show maybe next week. Randy was almost going to come over, but I don't feel well today. He was going to fill in for him. Like, no, I think I can make it through it. And yeah, I do want to. One person I really want to get is Robert. I want to get Robert on the live stream. I think you guys will enjoy him. Cheap no brand canister filters from China. What's my opinion? I would avoid them like the plague. Like, so when I say that, you're gonna be like, well, don't you try out Chinese canisters? Yes, I do. I try them out to make sure that they're garbage, and then not to use them. And if they're not garbage, then I can get them UL rated, so certified they're not going to burn your house down, and then we could sell them. But in general, like, I think it's just worth buying a name brand canister filter at this point. You pay a little bit more, but you're skipping ahead through so many crappy builds. That's really what you're paying for. And I'm going through it right now with hang on back filters. You're just looking like, this is just garbage. Like, there's, you know, like where I might break down a filter and be like, oh, I don't like this and I don't like this. It's like the opposite on some of those things. Like, I'm not sure there's a single thing I do like about this. This thing could be free and I'm angry that I have to recycle it. You know. What is cyanobacteria? What causes it? And how do you treat it? So cyanobacteria, aka blue-green algae, is a bacteria. What causes it? That's up for debate. Science is still studying it. There's a lot of guesses. And I say guesses because I've seen everything proved wrong a million times on that. Treating it, for me, you could technically never give it any light and it will die back. Really hard to get rid of altogether that way, though. I prefer using erythromycin antibiotic, and it nukes that stuff. So that's my preferred way to do it. But in general, keeping it at bay or way after you treat it, like increasing circulation, keeping keeping the tank a little bit cleaner. I don't know how to explain that. Like, don't let mold build up in corners, maybe, or fix circulation issues. Yeah, it's not. I don't even think it's that detrimental to an aquarium. It just looks bad. But yeah, if you didn't want it to come back, I guess the takeaway is you need to change something. Otherwise, it just comes back. You know, if you just do, if it shows up and you kill it and you change nothing else, it probably is just going to come back because the conditions were right for it to thrive already. So you have to make a change, I guess. What would I recommend to go with yellow labs in a 65 Mabuna tank? I know I want labs, but unsure of the rest. Well, Michael Sloan, I personally would go with Pseudochromis. What a noob. I'm such a noob. Pseudotropheus. Is that what I want to say? Pseudotropheus demasoni? Now my brain is like not working. Pseudotropheus solosi, or not solosi, but Pseudotropheus demasoni. Basically black and demasoni. Yeah, it is. Okay. My brain is just... So I'd run demasoni, which I used to think it was called demasoni, until I met the guy, and he was like, oh, I'm Leif DeMason. And I was like, oh, that's how you say that, because this fish is named after you. I would run those, so you get blue and black colored stripes. That's cool. And then you've got yellow labs. And then if you want an extra layer of spice, put in ACI. Like, you can go with whitetail or yellowtail there, but that purple plus the blue and black stripe plus the yellow, good looking color combo in there. Just do me a favor and don't do the kaleidoscope of like, I've got one of every Mabuna on the planet in the 65-gallon tank. Like, that is ultimate cliche. I just always feel like, oh, you went into PetSmart and you said I'll take one of everything. Cool. Oh yeah, your bumblebee's killing everything? Mm-hmm. Yep. That's what's gonna happen. Do I prefer water sprite or wisteria? I personally prefer water sprite because it can grow as a floating plant and it's got a different floating mode. Wisteria is cool too, but if I had to choose one, I'd rather have a plant that can do two different modes than one that only does one, I guess. Corey, do you sell Python no-spill water vacuum? Not yet. We have been in talks with the Python people directly. So if I'm being really honest, like, this is the problem we run into. So if I buy from a local wholesaler on the Python, like 25 foot thing, I want to say we pay like $32. And I think on Amazon, it's like $34. Like, I don't know the exact numbers, but I know that it's within $1. And so there is zero money to be made when I have to ship it for free. Because if you guys spend $70, we're going to ship it for free. You pay with a credit card, I'm going to lose money. And so we have to get it straight from the manufacturer, I think, to have a chance. Now, specifically with Python, there happens to be a problem in that they're selling directly to Amazon. So that makes it very difficult to compete with them when they go, oh, we'll buy $400,000 worth. They're going to get a better price than me buying $3,000 worth or $5,000 worth. We're trying, though. We're trying to work something out like, okay, like right now it's kind of the Wild West in online selling. There's a lot of map pricing, so minimum advertised price. And if you don't sell it above that or at that, they'll cut you off. There's a lot of products that don't have any map pricing, so technically I could just sell it at a loss if I wanted to, and that ruins the market. So yeah, we're trying to navigate through this and bring on products that we get to make money on and don't lose money on. There is a product that we're discontinuing. So when Randy came on, we were crunching some numbers, and one day I was like, wait a second. We literally lose money every one of these we sell. And it turns out it was the 4.4 pound Rapashi. Every one that we sell, because they're going to qualify for free shipping, and they like raised the price sometime last year, I think, and we didn't adjust. So literally each one we were selling, I think we lost $2. So it was like, won't be bringing any more of that in. Yeah. And it was like other people that were selling it were selling at the same price, in which case it made it so it's like, well, I don't want to be the high price guy, so I guess we're just going to stop selling it long term. We're going to sell all the other sizes. They're profitable, but literally the 4.4 pounder is not profitable. And believe it or not, when I started my fish store, everyone thought I was crazy. I said, I'm not going to do things that lose me money, which everyone says you have to. You have to sell feeder fish. You have to do these things. And I go, no one says you have to. Everyone thinks you have to. And I just don't think it's smart to, oh, each one of these I sell, I lose money. That's not a good place to be in. So, have I ever done underground filters in large tanks? Yeah. I've got an underground filter in the sump underneath the 800 gallon. I actually love underground filters. And I know that makes me sound crazy, and I'm okay with that. You know, Dean also likes underground filters. They're all a tool, right? In the right system, they're amazing. In the wrong system, they're terrible. But most things are that way. All right. Roman Greer said, I started a guppy breeding tank today for a new local pet shop. I'm about to order some plants from me. Any suggestions? Because you don't sell Java Moss. I know. If I just get my act together, I'd sell Java Moss. If everyone else in the world gets their act together, I'd sell Java Moss. Really. I would... Okay. So, let me do some brain thinkings here. So, if you're breeding those guppies for a store, right? Now, if you haven't watched my Breeding Fish for Profit series, you should. I'm trying to think of a plant that people are going to be successful with. So if it was me, I would get Water Sprite, get that floating, and then bring like half of that every time you sell it to the store, and then tell the store to either give it away or sell it with the people getting those guppies, and they're going to be very successful. And by proxy, your guppies are going to do so much better than any of the other guppies in the store, and they'll always keep buying more of your guppies. So it's a freebie that you make, and maybe you'll make a ton of it, and you can sell it to them and that kind of stuff. We'll have to see how that goes. But yeah, Water Sprite is one of my faves for sure. All those roots, good one. Welcome to the membership, Scott Opperdyke. I don't know. We only have 400 likes. We can definitely do better. Maybe. I can tell you're exhausted. Yes. There's been a lot of days in a row where, I mean, I already don't take days off, but there's been a lot of days that have been like 7 a.m. to 1 a.m. each day. You know, I know that, like, what was last night? What kept me up late last night? I don't know. But the night before, I was talking to the King of DIY through chat. That kept me up till like 12:30, maybe even 1, you know. And then, like yesterday, what did I do? Yesterday, we shot an insane amount of videos here. Joel was working on some cabinets. Then I took Robert, store manager, out to dinner because it's his birthday today. So happy birthday, Robert. Then After that, Jimmy and I hopped in the car, drove to the store, then continued to film, and we got home at about 11 o'clock at night. Then I had a bunch of work I had to get done, so I worked till about midnight. Then I finally went inside, talked to the wife for a little bit, went to bed. And that's been pretty much every day for the last week or so. So today I had to wake up, went to the airport to pick up an import. We picked up an insane amount of Zis filters from Korea. We did that. I had to get that into storage. Then I basically rested because I've had this chronic headache all day. And now I did the live stream. I was supposed to do a fish room tour of Randy's place, but I was like, I can't focus right now. I'm sorry. So yeah. And tomorrow I'm supposed to install cabinets and do all that, but I think I'm just going to say no, I have to rest. So yeah, I've actually been thinking about relaxing the work I do. And so what I mean by that is like right now we do a live stream and 2 videos every week. Like maybe I just go to 1 live stream, 1 video. I'm strongly considering not answering emails anymore. It's eating up so much of my time that it's making it hard to get anything else done. And so yeah. So we're thinking about hiring someone to do that, or at least getting enough employees that everyone can do it. And it's not that I would never answer emails. It's that like right now while I've been live, let's see if I have emails stacked up or if Katie's gotten to them. Yeah, we've got 5 shipping side. So that means like maybe people have a problem with their order or they have a question. And we've got 1 on team side. And so those are like the emails that the employees answer. And then I've got my own personal email with like right now I have correspondence from a manufacturer in China. And then I had a correspondence from someone at API. They want to do dinner at the Pet Expo. You know, so there's all these things that are always going on. And I'm just, stuff's starting to like fall through the cracks and I'm not getting the new products done. And so I was thinking about it earlier today where I was like, legitimately, one of the things I want to do most in the world is go set up more like tanks and finish the projects in the studio. How is it that even though I haven't traveled in over a month, I still haven't done any of that? And then I was like, I think there's just too many things that have to get done daily. If every day there's X amount of things, like think of it like chores. If there's 12 hours of chores every day, there's like no time left to get the extra projects done. So, yeah. All right, let's hop on these super chats. Are certain guppy strains smaller than others? I noticed that the black metallic snakeskin and black yellow metallic guppies tend to be smaller than, say, red guppies. Any advice on breeding metallic guppies? So yes, definitely size of guppy is one of the traits that are judged at shows. Some are much smaller, some are going to be whales. So yes, it's a genetic trait we can breed for. So when you see a giant one that you really like, buy that one. And it's probably going to come out breeding more giant ones. As far as breeding the metallic snake skins and that kind of stuff, should be no different than any other guppy. You basically want tons of cover, very good food, maybe even auto feeder, and wait for babies. Like they will make more babies. Yeah, that's why I love guppies. I'm trying to think of what else, because you paid $15. I feel like I owe you more, but it's like one of those like, well, it's just that's how it goes. Do I have any other advice on metallic guppies? Oh, if you can, do at least 2. Well, if you really could, do live baby brine shrimp. If you do that twice a day, live baby brine shrimp is a miracle drug for fish. Like it just, like Dean is the perfect example. How does he get so much fish coming out of that, 10 by 10 fish room? Live baby brine twice a day, unparalleled to any other food that will ever be on the market. I'm making that claim right now. True. Someone asked, would I recommend quarantining fish from a store that already quarantines? Yes. Always. Because there's always the chance, let's imagine I've got the new guy and he didn't know and he broke protocol and he moved a fish, like that could transfer to you. Like that's a rare scenario, but yes, there's also the, oh, we didn't notice it was sick, sorry about that, boom, that's a problem, right? So I think yes. And my question is, what have you got to lose? People go like, well, I got to set up a tank and blah blah blah. And if that's the case, you're just gonna find fish at a different source of where they're not quarantining that you're gonna need a quarantine tank for anyway. So I would always recommend a quarantine tank. And even if you never had sick fish that you're buying, sometimes you have a sick fish or a fish getting beat up, or you got babies that you want to raise some fish in there. Like it's just straight up useful. I'm trying to think of some other hobby where you're like, you've got this thing you only use 1 out of 4 weeks out of the month, and yet it's like quintessential, very important to have that for that hobby. And this is one of those things. It is very quintessential. So I feel like when I say words that are quintessential, that just sounds like I'm trying to sound fancier than I am. Important, that's the real word. It's just real important. So, will a fish store accept a large amount of fish fry? If it's free, maybe. If you're wanting money, no. Because like a fish's worth comes from the raising of it. That being said, if you had a bunch of fry and it was something I wanted, I'd be like, yeah, I'd put in the work for that. What also will go on sometimes, you might not be privy to that, is they're like, oh, this person's got more fry. Do we want to help them out? Sure, we'll take them all. And then they'll be like, yeah, put them in the convict tank. They get eaten. That type of thing. So, yeah. I don't have a local fish store to ask, do guppies get electrolyte imbalances? And do I use salt for my guppies? I personally don't use salt. That being said, I do believe minerals are very, very important. So some calcium, some magnesium, other trace elements, very important. So much so, in my own personal fish room years ago, I was really heavily testing 1 teaspoon of marine salt per 20 gallons. And I swear, the guppies looked better, they were healthier. It was such a small amount, plants did better. But because my water was missing those elements, I think that's why they did well. So I've got some ideas on that. I might develop a product down the road of like either a liquid, like, I want to develop like, oh, squirt this in, make your guppies better type of liquid. So yeah, but it's on like, I don't have time apparently to do anything. So it's on that list of like, yeah, we'll get to that never. So, all right. I lost about 20 fish when I didn't quarantine. I quarantine now for sure. That's a common theme. Like, you run into people like, I don't quarantine, never had a problem. And then you run into people that like they have had the problem and then they quarantine from then on. And I kind of think that's how it is. Like you get the one bad experience, you're like, yeah, I'm quarantining now. And from like a store perspective, that happens so often that of course you'd have to quarantine. That you can get lucky though, and I do believe it's on a scale. So like, let's say you buy a $2,000 flower horn. I do think your odds are lower that thing's going to be sick than a $1.99 neon tetra. I do believe that. Same thing with a high-end, any high-end fish. In general, they're worth so much money that wholesalers and stores were really making sure those things don't die. So, but the cheaper something goes, it's all of a sudden it's like, well, I can't be losing money selling these guys. Would I consider opening a second shop? No, definitely not. So I'll tell you a story. Legitimately, I was trying to figure out how do I ignite my passion back in the hobby. Because right now I'm on the fence of like, I like it, but I'm not enjoying it because I don't have any time to do it, right? So I thought, what if I go work in the store? I'll go there and I'll work 1 day a week. Yeah, fans are going to come in and that kind of stuff, but I'll take fish home. I'll fall in love with stuff again. And on Monday, I filmed an import unboxing, which you guys will be seeing that. And then after that, there was a bunch of people from out of town. There was like 2 different groups of people from out of town. It was someone's birthday. So there was like 3 groups. And it took me 90 minutes to get out of there, of like actively kind of trying to get out of there, of like, oh geez, because I had Randy plus another person waiting in a meeting here at the studio. And it took 90 minutes of selfies and questions and all that kind of stuff, which, like, I'm never going to just be like, sorry, can't talk to you. Like, I'm just not that type of person. But I realized then that I can never be in my own store again because literally there was a line to take selfies and that type of thing. And so, being that I can't be in a store, I don't want to open up another store because I don't know. It's just like more work, I guess, and it's another place I can't be. Like, why? I guess part of me is like, why put more effort into somewhere I can't go? You know, that would be like, oh man, I'm gonna buy a second house that I could never go to. That sounds awesome. You know, so yeah, and it makes sense just to be online. I really enjoy. Like, I'm much more likely, and we're looking at it. So heads up, Canadians. You listen, Canadians? We are further in the process to selling some products in Canada. So we are working on some of those things. That being said, had you asked 6 months ago, I'd be like, who knows? Maybe never. At this point, I'm not saying like, oh, it's in 6 months, but I'll say that like, I have some data. We've talked to some companies. We're making, it could be 10 years out still, but we are attempting, and we're doing the research, and we're looking into all the things we need to legally pull this off. So, but it could be years away. But we're actually working on it. So, you know, and that being said, just know that there's already a bunch of products that we won't be able to sell in Canada, like lights, plants. I think we'll be able to do fertilizers. You know, but there's a lot of things like different laws and stuff that really come into play. So, yeah. And we won't be shipping from us to Canada. We have to get it into Canada and then ship it through Canada. Right? So, because it'd be way too complicated to tell all the Canadians to be like, yes, you can buy these products, but none of those. And then for sure people would buy it and be like, I told you, you can't buy that. You know, we'd have to refund money, we have to do all these things, so it's going to have to be its own little separate entity. And we are working on it. Could be a million years away, though, you know, but we are working on it for sure. Alrighty. I got about 14 minutes. My head is pounding. It is not good. Do you think about shipping Easy Green to Europe? So those of you that are new, back probably around like 70,000 subs, we were selling Easy Green all around the world through Amazon. But what we learned is every country wants different chemical makeups and all that kind of stuff, and it was a real nightmare. And it did not work out very well, so we stopped doing it. That being said, we learned a bunch, and now we know what to look out for, and we'll be, you know, in a perfect world, 10 years from today, we sell everywhere, right? That's a perfect world. We'll see if we can get there. You know, it's very expensive. We've spent so much money in the last like 2 weeks. It's insane. You know, like it's stressful. I'll say that. I'll say this: Fluval's tripping. We are basically in a fight at the moment. I love their products. I don't love the way they do business. All right. If I met you, Corey, I'd give you some chocolate milk and tell you to take a nap and play with your dogs. Well, I appreciate that. I do like chocolate milk. You know, what I will say is now I need to be careful because I always say like, yeah, bring me stuff. It's awesome. At the last aquatic experience, we had so much stuff that I felt horrible. We had all kinds of candy bars and cookies, and we were sharing, and it was awesome. But now I need to be like, I almost need like, oh, we should. Oh, I just got a rad idea. Good idea. My new thing. I've been trying to figure this out, and I just thought of it. I've been trying to think, how can we make like these events cooler and better? What if I had like a sign-up sheet where you bring, like it's a potluck, like not, you know, don't bring chili, but I wonder if you could bring like, oh, I brought Rice Krispie treats. Oh, I brought cookies. Oh, I brought these things. I brought a bag of Snickers. Like we had like this whole like buffet table for all the convention goers. I think that'd be rad. Because it kind of is, I don't know if they'd let us do it, but it kills me. I remember 2 years ago when I think Tazawa's Tanks bought me a Reese's peanut butter cup, and it was $4. Like, it was insane. Like, they just gouge you at these conventions sometimes, so. All right. Oh, yes. Twin City Guppies, $1 nachos from the Quick Trip. Yes. I do love nachos, and I could make a whole video on how nachos taste better when they're $1 as opposed to like $10. No matter how ghetto they are in a gas station, $1. I can find the joy in almost about anything. Yeah, I don't know why. Alrighty. Sugar is poison. Pretty much everything on the planet is poison. Like, you're in a live stream talking about quarantining with meds. That in itself is poison. So, just the air we breathe at this point is poison. Pretty much everything is poison. And I married a baker, so like my wife would probably be like, "Oh, it's on. It is so on. I'm a potluck the heck out of this." Like she lives to like, yeah. So it's my niece's birthday. If you guys have watched that video, older people the channel have, where we set up that tank. It's her birthday on Saturday, so my wife's gonna do some ridiculous cupcakes. How did you make out with the Owaze after last week? Truth be told, so here's how this went down. Truth be told, I got off the live stream and I was like, "Hey, Randy, you might want to listen to that." Kind of went insane. Like Owaze might be done. And so then he watched it. He's like, "Oh, it's all fair criticism. Like, nothing too bad there." So he actually sent them a thing and said, "Hey, here he reviewed the filter. You guys asked for any kind of feedback. He did that." And their social media person was like, "Cool." And then we were asking about like, do we want to work together on this? And they started asking some of the engineers. And then at this point, it's in like this higher up people above the person we were talking to. And I guarantee at some point they're trying to figure out, is this good or bad for the company? Do we work with this person or not? Like how much would this cost? Blah, blah, blah. Does this guy even know anything? And so right now we're in limbo. Like it might be a rad partnership or it may never amount to anything. Right now, no matter what happens, we will be at their booth, I guess, because we're going to Global Pet Expo in Florida in a couple months. And so we'll at least, walk by and be like, "Hey, that filter sucks, by the way." And they'll be like, "Oh, you're that guy." Yeah. Do I work out? Do I look like I work out? No. Like, that's one of the reasons why I want to work at the store. Like, just being super active in the store, running around, even in the warehouse. I guess I could do the warehouse, but no, and that's something I want to do more of. Like, I'm not a guy that like wants to work out, but want to walk my dogs more. I kind of want to do some mountain bike riding again. I used to be really into BMX biking, mountain biking, that kind of stuff when I was younger, and but the problem is there's just I'm making excuses. Let's just be honest, but I'm so busy that I'm like, there's just not time to do anything, and so I got to fix that time issue first. I need to have like an hour in the day where I'm like, you know what, I'm bored. I got nothing to do. And then maybe I'll be like, oh man, I should do things instead of just work myself nonstop. And there's just never ending work kind of. So, which I love. I've actually considered, I was thinking about this morning, I was wondering like if there's some counseling I can go to because I really love working. Like I think I'm addicted to it. And I'm like, I wonder if there's like some way I could not love it as much without just being like, oh, now I hate working. Like I need it in moderation. That's the problem. Like I'm a guy I don't moderate anything. Like it's all or nothing. Like, oh, I see you have a cookie. I've eaten all of those cookies now. That type of thing. So kind of the same thing. Like, oh yeah, you think it's a good idea if we put labels on these? There's 22,000. I'm just gonna do all 22,000 today then. But we only need 100 for the week. Yeah, but if we get them all done, we're done then, right? I've got that problem of just like, let's just knock it out. And it works well in business. Like it makes it a profitable business, but at the same time, it makes for a no social life. Pretty much, yeah. All right. I got 6 minutes. I came in your store about 3 weeks ago after looking for some SAEs, and my store was sold out. I was sold an incandescent silver dude with a black spot on the tail. Can you tell me what you got? You got a reticulated Siamese algae eater. My employees actually prefer those to Siamese algae eaters, but they're in the same little family as those guys, and they typically do a better job. So that's what you got. Do I carry the Fluval Flex 15? And if so, what is your price? My local store has them for $140. You're an extra 15 minutes away. Well, I'll tell you what, I'll look it up. I'll tell you if I have any in stock currently. We do carry it. I just don't know if I have any in stock right this second. And then I'll tell you what we sell it for. Let me see. Go into products here. I've got my page up, so because I'm always working. All right, let's see. We sell the 15 gallon. We have one in stock. We sell it for $129.99. And you had said your store sells it for, where was that at? $140. You're only saving $10. So it probably makes more sense for you to buy it in your local store. And then, yeah, I mean, only saving $10. I mean, unless you've never been to the store. So, yeah. That being said, I will say this. You do save $10 buying from us, but the real benefit is our insane customer service. So, like, if something was to go wrong, we just make it so right. Where a lot of other stores don't, they don't do that, you know. So, like, yeah, we like if something goes wrong, we'll just make it right. Where I hated having to battle stores as a consumer. Michael Sloan says, "Do we need to boycott Fluval?" Not yet. Nope. I will say there's definitely been like ill feelings currently. I'm just like, are you guys kidding me right now? You know, like because this is just me in my own giant ego going, you know how many Fluval lights I've sold even through like Amazon? Like we don't sell on Amazon, but just the fact of like the videos and the fact that I love that thing and that we, you know, I say we as a business reach millions of people every month. Like in general, Fluval is a good company that makes good products. They just are having some troubles right now that is driving me insane. Like the fact that I haven't had Fluval Nano lights and we've been actively trying to order them for nearly 60 days now. Like there's just that kind of stuff. You know, or the fact that we keep selling out their West Coast warehouses and they're being very slow to get things onto our side of the country. Even though it's like I always have a problem when, like let's say I sell, like let's say this Fritz Complete. Let's say I sell your warehouse out of it every month. After 9 months, you would think they would stock more on the West Coast warehouse, except they're not. And Fritz, like, we're getting some of this, but I've never bought from them yet, technically. But, like, that's just infuriating when you're just like, how are we still having the same exact problem? Like, you have to have software that it's been long enough, it's picked up the forecasting trends. And if not, can you please just tell the buyer to keep more on the West Coast? Like, I promise you, I will buy them. We keep shipping them across the country, and it takes way longer. So it's stuff like that that is just super frustrating, you know. And we want better pricing. We want better pricing on hang-on-back filters. We get terrible pricing. That's just the truth. And we know our competitors have better pricing. And so, you know, when your rep says like, well, you know, they got that pricing, you know, like 12 years ago. We don't really give that out anymore. That's not an excuse. You know, that's like me saying, well, you know, if you've been around the channel, you can have a discount. Oh, you were here since 40,000 subscribers? Yeah, you get a discount. Oh, you found us at 240? Nope. Oh, you're willing to spend 10 grand and the person at 40,000 subscribers only wants to spend $1? Nope, we're still giving the person with $1 discount. Like that old thinking is just not good, you know? And so either I always just ask people, like, just give us a level playing field. Either A, no one gets a discount, or B, someone who wants to sell a lot of your stuff, let me have the discount too. Like that's just how it is. You know, that being said, like Fluval has been, not even Fluval, lots of companies say they're going to fix the Amazon problem, and that is where products are being sold for cheaper than wholesale on Amazon. It's like, yeah, we get it, guys. You guys had the same song and dance for 8 years now, you know? And they're like, well, we can't figure out, it's not us selling it to Amazon. You know, I'm like, yeah, it's one of your reps selling it to its brother or sister, and then they're selling it to Amazon. Like they're going, watch this. 28% discount. Yeah, we're going to sell it to store XYZ in the middle of nowhere. You know, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out, like, Oklahoma population of 4,000 in this city is not moving a billion lights. That's Amazon, you know. But it's almost better for them to turn the blind eye of like, can't find it, can't. Oh, I have no idea, you know. And it's just super frustrating, is all. Like, if you're gonna give them the discount, just let me have the same discount. That's all I want. That's all I want. Let me do it. That being said, still great products. I can't argue that. How long should you quarantine new fish? I would say at least 1 week, maybe a month. A month is kind of it's long enough to be like, wow, it's a long time. And you probably should have seen most illnesses. A week, I feel, is like bare minimum. And anywhere in between there, you as an aquarist will probably settle in. You know, you might find if you go shopping at the fish store every 3 weeks, like, well, then your quarantine will be like 3 weeks. So, yeah. Find something that's going to work for you. When you're new, well, then you got to like, well, I got to quarantine only a week because I'm buying fish every week, right? All right, it's 7 o'clock. I have a migraine and Awaze and flu will probably hate me at this point. So eventually we will find a company to work with. I'm pretty certain that the other thing that we had that I thought I finally had a company to work with has fallen through at this point. And I didn't even make fun of them. Yeah, didn't even make fun of them to make that one not work. They just never, you know, that's one of the other things is like our business moves incredibly quickly. When I place an order and it's like 5 weeks later and you haven't shipped it yet, that's a problem. You know, like that's one thing I'm teaching Randy. Like, if people can't, like, if we start a business relationship and they have my money and 5 weeks later we don't have a product, it's almost a kiss of death already. It's literally almost a kiss of death of like, you're moving so slow. How are we going to react when I go, oh, geez, yeah, this thing's super cool, guys. You should buy it. And then you guys buy a ton, and then I'm sold out for, you know, it's almost like I got a Fluval Nano 3.0 light's been sold out for 60 days. That sucks. Let me keep telling you how good that light is. It is really good. And it's exacerbated by the fact that I'm paying affiliates, and I've given them these lights, and they've made the videos, and they're literally like, I'll release the video the minute they come back into stock. Because the light is good. The promotional video will be good. They're being used in very unique ways between the people that have gotten them. And it's like, we just can't get it done, apparently. Just can't get it done. You know, it's not from lack of money. It's not even a discount thing. It's just, I just need it. All right, well, Dan's Fish is live now. Speaking of which, I have not had enough time to follow up with Dan. So if someone talks to Dan, apologize for me that I got Lucas Bretz, and then I got sick, and then whatever else happened. Like, I still got to read his email. And I believe also Friday Fish Facts is live. Now, why is that relevant? 1, I've been on a show. 2, I believe that Master Breeder Dean is on his channel right now. So you might want to go out, check that out. Dean is a barrel of laughs. You know, always fun to hang out with. And I would imagine that Dean will make that worth showing up to. So I'm going to go eat some dinner finally. Well, I had a little bit of dinner before I went live. Some, like, stew kind of stuff. I'm going to have a little bit more, and I'm going to cuddle with Wincy, Sassy, and Tinky, and my wife, and try to fall asleep and wake up without a migraine. So, thank you guys for showing up. Super duper appreciate it. Thank you to all the new members. Thanks for buying from us. Thanks for supporting us. Thanks for listening to the rants. And one day, I will change this hobby somehow. Yeah. I'm going to find the button, though. Bert went live also? Who's Bert? Like Bert and Ernie? Alright, let me find. Gotta find the button. There we go. Alright. Seriously, thank you guys. We'll see you next time. Next Wednesday. Woo! 5 o'clock, be there. There's the button.